going to let some people that are joining the seminar here a minute just to get connected, and we'll get started shortly. I'm Dan Onofrio with the Bridgeport Regional Business Council and our affiliated chambers of Bridgeport, Stratford, and Trumbull Chambers of Commerce. And we're joined this afternoon by a great group of leaders in our region. I'm really looking forward to the conversation, but we'll get started shortly. Let's see what the waiting room looks like here. Okay, 3:01. So I'm going to get started, and we'll just, as folks join in, we'll welcome them as they come in. And again, I'm Dan Onofrio with the Bridgeport Regional Business Council. Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time out of your afternoon to visit with us and pick up on I guess the third conversation we're having now related to lessons in leadership. It's something that we branded early on in the pandemic at the Business Council and the Greater Valley Chamber of Commerce, who I'm joined here by Bill Purcell, the president of that chamber. I'll introduce him in a moment. But you know, as the pandemic hit, as you all know, we all experienced, there was a bit of a triage mode that we all went into, and in conversations with many of our partners, you know, hearing how they were navigating and pivoting was the key word, I think, back then with their businesses. We thought, gosh, wouldn't these conversations be great to share with our membership and with the business community at large? And we thought we would hold a session similar to this that you'll experience today, related to lessons in leadership. And we did two sessions on this conversation related to how these esteemed leaders navigated their businesses over the course of the last year. And we thought, now that we're all figuring out how to live with this thing and adjust our particular businesses related to the pandemic, how do we look forward? And I think today's session is going to be fantastic. I am grateful for all the folks that are on the call, which will be introduced momentarily, that are participating in this discussion. And I'm also very grateful for Doug Rawadi and Bob Carbonello over at Sandler Peak Training, who are going to be facilitating this particular session, but have really been doing a great job of keeping this conversation alive, as well as others related to leadership and training and development and all those things. They're a wonderful resource, and we appreciate their participation and for their work today. So with that, I welcome you all, and I will pass the baton here to Bill Purcell, president of the Greater Valley Chamber of Commerce and a good friend of mine. So Bill, good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you, Dan. It's always a pleasure to join with BRBC and your fine family of chambers, and particularly at this time. You know, Dan, we just came off of our 12th annual LeaderCast event. This was a day-long immersion in leadership. We held it at Bob Cinto's magnificent auditorium. Another group was on it virtually. So this is just perfectly timed to move from national discussion about pivoting and shifting to a local discussion with this very distinguished panel of local business leaders, area business leaders. I just want to formally as well echo your thoughts about our partnership with Sandler Training with Bob and Doug. I'll formally introduce Doug. Doug has got over 35 years of B2B, B2C sales, marketing, management, and customer service experience. He's a gifted speaker and facilitator, as you will see momentarily. He's a certified instructor at Sandler Peak Performance. And I will say that Sandler's been a sponsor of LeaderCast for the past 12 years, for all 12 years. And we thank you for that, Doug, as well. And then finally, to my friends, the 7 of you, this wonderful panel. We all have a deep admiration and respect for you, what you've done with your organizations during these very difficult times. And we look forward to the discussion today. So with that, Doug, we're going to turn the stage or the floor or the screen over to you.
Thanks so much, Bill and Dan. That's very, very well put, covering all the bases. Welcome everybody who's here. It's a real honor and a real privilege to be able to deliver this webcast for you today. And as Dan mentioned, this is actually the third in the series. We started this last year, and the theme for this particular program is the road to recovery. And it's kind of a lip service commitment, or at least acknowledgement of the fact that as far as COVID is concerned, for many business owners and the folks here in the panel today, they're on the other side of it. It doesn't mean it's over. It doesn't mean there aren't challenges still ahead, but they're approaching this a bit differently than they did a year ago at this time, as probably are many of you out in the audience or the attendee area, I guess you could say. So we expect that the insights that will be offered here today will be of some benefit to you, and you'll be able to, at the very least, relate to the challenges that are being described and some of the things that these folks are going through to kind of address them. And with regards to these folks, very quickly in the esteemed panel we have here, Laura Marasco, CEO of West-Conn Tool, Mike Ayles, the principal of Antinozzi Associates, Jeff Wright, owner of Remax Right Choice. We have David DeMaio, the leader and owner of Pat Munger Construction, Chris Douglas, president of ENCON, Doug Wade, Doug, the other Doug, we have to kind of make sure we have that distinction here, is the founder, president of Wade's Dairy, and of course, Mr. Sean Rabinowitz, the president of Procyon Benefits. So welcome all of you. And just as a quick aside for you people who might be wondering, how do we manage to corral these people on this program? I'm going to let you in on a little secret. They have been part of a peer group that we organized at the very beginning of this year. And every month, these folks all get together and they talk strategy, they talk business, they talk everything and anything having to do with how to grow their businesses and move their businesses forward. And we at Sandler are honored to be a part of that. And if any of you out there would like to know more about it and think, maybe this is something I'd like to investigate, reach out to me directly and we'll be happy to give you some insight and input as to what the P2P Executive Council is all about. Now, on that note, we got a number of questions that we kind of put together ahead of time that we thought would be relevant to all of you. And if we have time before this thing wraps up, you're certainly welcome to put some questions in chat. I know that Dan and Bill will be kind of moderating that. And we'll see if we can get to them if we run out of time, or if we don't run out of time, I should say. So Laura, in the spirit of ladies first, we're going to pose this. And by the way, we're going to let these folks just kind of chime in. This is not an organized conversation, more of a roundtable, much like we do when we meet every month. But the first question is, how have you modified or upgraded your business model since the beginning of this year of 2021 to better serve your customers and or your employees? What changes have you had to make or implement?
Well, I think, at the very beginning, when all this started to happen, we had to quickly pivot from medical, because we do medical devices for surgeries, and when elective surgeries were canceled, we pivoted to aerospace because we do both. So we really did have to concentrate on that. But then after a while, I realized that lamenting for things to go back to normal was not serving anyone. And it kind of freed me to realize that there's no going back. There's only going forward. And once I realized that, it really opened up opportunities for us that maybe we wouldn't have jumped on, because the status quo is the status quo. And since the status quo was gone, it was much easier to just move forward into something else. So we, one thing we did is we added additive manufacturing, and, we looked at it for years, but we probably would not have done it because we would have been afraid, quite honestly. But we kind of just, we did it. We saw it as an opportunity, and this is the new way, this is a new world. And so we've added that, which is going well. And something even as simple as, a name change, which we've talked about for years, to kind of identify a little bit more of what we do and how we've evolved. I mean, we started 38 years ago and our name doesn't serve us with what we really do any longer. So we, this kind of opened up our eyes to the fact that we could change our name. Things could change. And I think that's the biggest lesson and how we've modified. So now we do things, like I said, status quo always keeps you, fearful to move ahead or do something completely different. But I think this kind of has freed us to take a look at things a little differently and, maybe just take some steps that you would never have taken before, had it not been for this. So I look at it as an opportunity to kind of like we were molting, or, the change is good. And we were all just kind of shaken into a change, out of nowhere. But I think it's definitely an opportunity. And, we just are moving forward that way, adding new capabilities, even adding employees, just going out there, marketing ourselves more than we ever had. So doing it virtually, having a virtual open house, just a bunch of different things that we probably wouldn't have done because it's kind of a lot of work. But things were so hard anyhow. Why not just move forward and try something new?
That's awesome. I want to quickly get Doug Wade's input, because I think probably of anybody on this panel who may have had to really kind of reinvent themselves, it was probably Wade's Dairy, because so much of your business kind of was taken away from you without you really having much of a say in it. So Doug, share with everybody just a little bit about what you had to do at Wade's Dairy to kind of adapt moving forward once the year got underway this year.
I just wanted to correct one statement you made, because if I was the founder of Wade's Dairy, I'd be about 160 years old right now. So I wasn't the founder. I am the current president, all right, but fourth generation.
Fair enough.
I think the biggest key, change is we have had to listen so intently to our customers, so intently to our suppliers, to understand the dynamics of all the changes that are coming our way and all of the supply chain issues that we're facing. If you're not paying real close attention, hands-on, really staying on top of your situation, you're going to get lost. You're going to be a horrible mess. So we have just, been great at pivoting, at reacting, and staying on top of our game as best we can, because change is the name of the game. And if you're not willing to, be ready for change and watching for it, and this panel, the discussions we've had have been awesome, and it's so important to listen to what everyone else is doing, so you get better ideas on how you can focus better on how you might change your operation to handle what's going on. So I mean, real happy that I've been a member of this group of leaders, because I've learned so much from all of them, what they have done, and hopefully they've learned from me about things that we've gone through. But it's a new world out there.
Anybody else? That's a good one. We have plenty of questions, but if anybody wants to piggyback on any of that, Chris Douglas, you always have some insightful things to chime in on there. How have you been changing things up since the beginning of the year?
So well, first, Doug, thanks for that compliment. I'll take it as a compliment. Insightful. What we're doing right now is we're trying to get back to, first of all, we never really deviated from what I would say it was normal for our business. What we did in 2020 was we tried to accommodate every employee to what they wanted. So we had a number of employees that wanted to work at home. We also had a number of employees that cared not to do that and wanted an office environment to come to. So we tried to accommodate everybody by setting up remote work opportunities, by providing distancing in the office. What I encouraged amongst our leadership group was leadership presence. I think that leadership presence is vital to any organization. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. While a lot of us were here, I, for example, did not break my routine, not one bit, not one day. I just stayed the course throughout the entire COVID period, and was in here at the same time every morning. However, I happened to be on a Zoom call or Zoom meeting, whatever you want to call it, during the COVID period, and it was an important meeting. And I realized that one of the individuals on the call he had actually left his business and was actually down at his home in West Palm, Florida, and the background from literally the live background behind him was a shot of the ocean. And that struck me as not being a good thing for a business, this particular business that he had, because what it said to me was that he wasn't at his place of business, and he didn't have that leadership presence. And it was the type of business, quite frankly, where that individual, in my view, there were people at the office, there were people in his organization, and I felt that his presence would have really added value throughout the crisis. And so I encouraged our leaders to exercise leadership presence to their comfort level. And we have a good solid bunch of leaders here at ENCON, and all of them were hands on deck, doing what they had to do each and every day to make their employees, the people that work for them specifically, comfortable, to accommodate them, and at the same time, to make sure that our customers were well informed, that we're here for them, and that if they picked up the phone and they called us for service or for anything that we provide to them, that they knew that they were going to get that service and that reaction from us. So what we tried to do, stated in probably a simpler way, is we tried really, really hard not to change through the COVID period. Now, since the start of 2021, what we've done is through 2020, we cut back on our SG&A items a lot, okay? Because we cut back on some training, we cut back on a lot of things. And what we had to do starting in 2021 is we had to gear back up for some of that stuff. So we're reinventing some of the things that we did prior to COVID, through COVID, and then we're using 2021 as an opportunity to sort of sharpen the saw. Actually, we did that toward the end of 2020, just to make things better. And then come right into 2021, we've done some really neat things in here, like started our own university, our own training program. And it's really geared towards getting our employees really, really comfortable. We want to be the best place to work. We want to be the best company in our industry to work. And so what we're doing is we're really strengthening our employee benefits programs. We're really trying to provide out of the box things that make the employees feel like this is where they want to be. All the while we're focusing on our customers and really getting back to that face-to-face customer communication as best that we could, and trying to create that strong customer experience.
Awesome. And you actually just provided a natural segue to another question that I wanted to pose. It has
That's
to do
what I do.
You're so gifted, and I suspect the other folks are going to have something to say about this. So on the subject of employees and employee retention and all that, got to put on my spectacles here. The Harvard Business Review recently posted an article stating that up to 48% of the workforce is now considering employment options outside of their current place of employment, meaning where they have been working. And I'm gonna, in the interest of spreading the wealth on this, I'm gonna pass this around to the other folks. What are you doing at your organization to retain employees and show them they're a valued asset? And that can be Mike, that can be Sean, that can be Jeff, David. Any of you want to take that? David, go ahead. Give us some insight.
Good afternoon, all. I'm going to piggyback just a little bit on what Chris said. Is one thing that we did do here is we didn't change our day-to-day routine. We made it comfortable for people to go work remotely. Those that wanted to come in, we kept them safe. My key leaders, myself, and Pam, who's my wife, who's HR, we did not miss a beat. I was here every morning at the same time. We handled every phone call live during the pandemic. And what we did for our employees and how we retained what we have is we over communicated with them. Everything that we could possibly do, we communicated by email, by Zoom call, by outreach. I started a daily outreach, which I now have scaled back to once or twice a week. And it was some inspirational thing. It may be a quote. It may be something that I built on. We took 2020 and we stayed the real solid course. And as we got into 2021, we instituted the training programs that we had in place. Every Tuesday afternoon from 4 to 5, Pam and I hold an open session for employees to come in and see us. We got those back on live as best we could. And we now are solidly planning for 2022 and a deeper level of employee engagement. We're going to expand our leadership teams and really drive decision-making and problem solving down through the organization. We never had a waiver on our benefit package with our teams during these pandemics. Even though we were essential business, like most people on the call were, we still had quite a bit of business that got postponed. But our mission was to keep everyone employed, to take care of our employees under all circumstances related to COVID and family issues. So people, needed to share daycare at home because of because kids were home from school, children home from school. We accommodated everybody to make sure that they knew that they were the most important thing to us and our customers. If you don't have your employees and you can't service your customers, you'll never stay in business. So that's what we did. And that's, we're going into 2022 with some things that we're going to roll out in a week or two to our employees that I'm not going to share on the group, but we have I think we're really exciting 2022 coming up in terms of how we're going to drive leadership to the organization and really engage our employees deeply in our company.
That's awesome. Sean, I noticed, and Jeff, I want to come back to you in a second because your employee situation is a little bit different. You have employees, but a lot of your team are independent contractors. So I want to give you a little bit of a moment, but I saw Sean nodding there and also Mike, and the fact that you two gents you had some rather profound changes in your own career trajectories this year. So that may have impacted a lot of this conversation, at least as it pertains to employees. So you can piggyback on each other or talk over each other or under or side by side, whatever you want to do.
Sean,
Please feel free to elaborate.
Sean can go and then I'll go.
Okay, cool.
Unmute Sean.
There you go.
So thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone who's joining us today. I think I would just piggyback on what David said about being empathetic, right? And I think that was the biggest thing that was a needed change with us in our leadership organization, is to be more empathetic to situations that were ongoing. The pandemic forced people into some very difficult decisions and situations. And as business leaders, I think we needed to better understand what that meant for the organization and how we help them and make them feel safe and secure. And doing that in a balance of, you had people on different trajectories in terms of what they thought of COVID, right? And I mean, it's kind of a microcosm of the political atmosphere that we live in. We had some people who were very scared of COVID and did not want to come back to the office, and how do we best serve them? And those that said, kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, hey, we're going to keep doing what we're doing every day, and didn't have a concern. And how do you balance both of those feelings, continue to make everyone feel safe and continue to run a top shelf organization? So I think empathy and just understanding and listening to your employees was something that really rang out loud for us during the transition. And I think both Chris and David said it was employee benefits. And it also happens that that's the business that we're in, is consulting employee benefits. And whether it's us or Chris or David, there's not one client out there that we have that hasn't said, am I doing enough? Right? Am I doing enough? What else can I do to enhance my employee benefits package? And so I think that message is consistent, with our organization, with other organizations represented, and in the general market, and that's across all industries.
Yeah, so I would say, much to the history of this group, Doug, you had posed a question, and we're starting to go into like the 7 other questions that we were looking at answering. So there's a couple of different ways of looking at this. You had mentioned initially, how we're finding the fact that there's been issues with struggling, labor shortages and finding staff. Then there's the retention of them. So it's, really 2 different questions. And we've been dealing with this as a profession, a design profession, for years before the pandemic because of recessions. Numerous people in our professions, really in the design field left in the early 90s and in 2008 in the Great Recession. So we've been dealing with this even before the pandemic, trying to find qualified staff. And really when it comes down to it, you're just trying to surround people that are ultimately, more knowledgeable and more experienced sometimes than you are. Surround yourself with better people, right? On the retention thing, I think you've already heard it. It's trying to always look at your benefits, looking at your packages, looking at what makes you competitive in the field. We all have a lot of competitors. So trying to maintain that level of expense. And I think one of the biggest things is trying to maintain a culture. I can't express how many firms, how many companies have indicated their loss of culture because of the virtual world we've been living in for 18 months. And trying to get that back has been probably one of the things that I've had the most sleepless nights on, is how do you get everybody swimming in the same, direction when you're all like this and not in that physical space. And And I think really it comes down to, the leaders have to be, Sean couldn't have said it better. I mean, empathetic, listening. That's one of the questions I would probably answer exactly, is just being able to listen to your staff and have a complete open door policy at all times. Everyone went through this differently, so you just have to address it very uniquely, regarding whether it's a pandemic or still results from the Great Recession, right? So.
Brilliant. Jeff Wright, your industry was probably one of the few that had just a banner year this year as a result, maybe in part or in large part, of COVID. And keeping a giant team together like you have had, was that more difficult, less difficult? What did you have to do to, ensure their loyalty and their productivity over the last, 8-10 months here?
Yeah, so I'll start with the loyalty part. I think when I hear the number that 48% of the study is saying people are looking outside their workforce, that's a huge number. So for us, it starts literally with making somebody feel part of a great team, that they're not an individual by themselves. They're part of a great team. They're appreciated. They're valued. They make a difference. And so during COVID, during all of this, I mean, it's something we've always done, is to help people understand that we think they're great and they're going to make our team better and they really matter. But during all of this, with the sales force, with everybody that's there, is I think that one of the greatest things we all have to do is continue to be able to connect with them on multiple levels. So, we saw great fear. We saw people that were missing the social connection, missing just the support of what was there. So we really spent a tremendous amount of time with video messaging, tremendous amount of time just trying to connect to people to make sure they were okay. But if I was to say anything, like if you surveyed me and said, did I think 48% of a workforce is looking someplace else, that number blows me away, because for us, it's about, no matter what the situation of the pandemic or pre-pandemic, it's always about trying to make them feel like they make a difference. And when they feel like they make a difference, the compensation, the packages, all those things aren't as important if they think they're valued and appreciated.
Outstanding. I'm going to actually, just because, again, nice segue, because you touched on something that I thought would be worth asking, because it might be relevant to everybody else. And with regards to communication to your employees, and let's expand it beyond just employees, but when you're talking to your customers, your prospective customers, suppliers, strategic partners, and employees, how have you changed the dialogue? Not so much, and maybe not even so much the dialogue, but the modality, the method of communication versus how you may have done it more than a year ago. And let's again use sort of the beginning of 2021 as kind of a point forward, because I think a lot of people a year ago would have thought by now that, or by the end of 2020, the pandemic was going to be behind them, and it didn't turn out to be that way. So, shout it out. Anybody that wants to take a stab at that can certainly start the conversation off. But what's changed? What's working now that you never thought would work, or what are you doing that's different? Anybody?
If I could just start the conversation real
Sure.
quick. What I've noticed, there's the kind of the saying that, all fashion comes back after 30 or 40 years, right? What's really apparent to me and observing is we are all inundated with texts and emails and virtual meetings and the digital electronic world. And what I'm starting to see is that people are coming out to personal events again and phone calls. I've always kind of dealt more on an email, text, digital world, because I'll respond, at all ungodly hours in the morning, anybody who knows me, because I'm a night owl. I don't expect people to answer a phone at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, but what I'm realizing is during business hours, there's nothing like that personal touch in a phone call. And I'm seeing it kind of revert back. Yeah, we're all digital, but we're kind of sick of it. Not you guys, of course, because we've been doing this virtually for a while. But I do see that with clients, that they appreciate the touch, the phone call, the conversation, meeting in person again. There's more of a vigor and more of an energy to it, as opposed to, yeah, I got to have a meeting or I got to make a phone call. Now it's like, yeah, I want to make a phone call, or I want to meet with that person for lunch. And that's something I've observed probably over the last few months.
Yeah, I would say that what we spend a lot of time here talking about is the relationship in our industry, and we're in HVAC, part of the construction industry. We're in a relationship business. It's always been a relationship business, and over the past, I'd say, 8 to 10 years, we've moved from more of a face-to-face, across the table negotiation to more electronic exchange of information. There are construction software platforms that everybody uses now. And so what's happened in our industry is we've sort of gone away from the personal touch, and we're trying to get back to more of that. I push relationships all the time. I think that relationships build trust, in my view, and then trust is the lubrication to all other business. So I think you have to be focused on the relationships with your customers. And I just, to me, and it could be just me, I might be a little bit old fashioned, but that face-to-face, that looking folks in the eye across the table, working out a deal, talking with people, talking through problems, I just find it so much more effective than trying to do it via text and or email, or even over a Zoom meeting, although Zoom meeting could be effective, but we're trying to get back to some face-to-face communications and just really focusing on building and maintaining, keeping good, strong relationships.
To that point, I'll just put this out for all of you. I mean, a case could probably be made for pre-COVID. A lot of people took face-to-face for granted. I mean, it was the way that we did business largely. And now 18 months, 20 months or so into this thing, when we've been doing this through Zoom and all sorts of electronic communications, now all of a sudden there's maybe a renewed appreciation for the value of that, of how much that can impact the relationship in the communication or otherwise. Is anybody else kind of feeling that or seeing that or getting that from the partners they're working with, be they suppliers or otherwise?
I'm strongly encouraging every one of my employees to put the email down and pick up the phone. I keep hearing, well, I emailed the person, they haven't gotten back to me. And I said, well, have you picked up the phone and called them? That's just and again, not to repeat everything Chris said, is that it's the renewal that we're making here, is getting out and delivering the proposals by hand. We got so lazy to put them, scan them in, email them, thanks for the opportunity, call me if you have any questions. You need to get in front of the customer. You need to communicate what's in that proposal to the customers. We take it for granted that they understand the lingo. They understand what we're trying to deliver in that proposal to them. And chances are they've misinterpreted some or all of it. And we need to get back in front of them. But I will say this about Zoom is that when it's appropriate, it saves a lot of road time going from meeting to meeting. But it's good initially, but when you're ready to deliver that final proposal and really have a conversation that's meaningful, you need to get in behind the wheel and get there and see them. And you need to pick up the phone. A couple of email exchanges I'm okay with. When it starts getting back and forth, I actually, if I happen to be carbon copied on some of these exchanges, I'll go over and see my employee and say, pick up the phone. Stop it, just get on the phone and get it resolved. So very important.
Good advice.
Doug, there's something to be said about shaking hands, right? Like I think Chris said it too. There's something to be said about looking across someone, shaking their hand, and having that face-to-face contact. There really is, and that I think that's the best thing about trying to get back to that normal, is to have that contact. Like I remember when we first started doing on this panel these Zoom calls. Early on, I think, I saw Chris Douglas, or I wasn't sure if it was Chris Douglas, having a breakfast meeting at a diner. I was having a breakfast meeting right across. And as much as we had talked via Zoom, I never met Chris in person. So I wasn't 100% sure that was him, right? Laura Marasco, I saw Laura, and Laura's like, I think that we got, right? Like, not everything can be accomplished via Zoom. You're never going to develop those personal relationships until you're really out in front of someone. So I think, I agree with all that said is, getting back out. And David brought up one of my personal pet peeves is when I see that back and forth 3, 4, 5 times, and then someone come in and say, what do I do here? Well, you pick up the phone. And it seems to be a lost art.
It's interesting you say that because we had the occasion here about a week ago. We were at a substantial networking function, and I likewise ran into a few people or saw people that we had been communicating with this way. And it was one of those things. Your first inclination was you see them from across the room, and you want to do this and see, is this what they would look like? Is this? Oh yeah, they look like they do on a Zoom. No, that's you. So it's kind of rare and different beginning to reacquaint yourself with folks on a person-to-person basis. Somebody had mentioned supply chain earlier, and I want to touch on that only because it's certainly front page news and has been for a while. And I think those of you, Laura, you might in particular have some thoughts on this, and even Jeff, because you might suggest or make a good case that real estate is either in short supply or large supply, and if it's not there, what do you do? But the question here is this: supply chain issues have also been negatively impacting businesses and consumers since the economy began turning around earlier this year. So broadly, how have you worked around them, and in what way have you had to change your messaging to set the right expectations regarding timetables, costs, deliverables with customers and any strategic partners that you work with to deliver ultimately the product or service? Laura, you want to take a quick stab at that, since I think has had some impact on your business?
Well, actually, we've been kind of lucky. We buy a lot of steel and, metals and things like that. Hasn't been too bad. That being said, we usually do buy on demand. We don't keep a lot of inventory of that, but, we are looking to just have some inventory of things that if we couldn't get for some reason, it would be disastrous. But we buy most of our stuff is American, so we buy throughout the US. So it's luckily because of that, I think that we haven't really been affected too much. All our steels and things like that, maybe some from Europe, but it's mostly particularly US. So yeah,
Sure.
So it's better to buy US.
Well, I don't think anybody here would disagree with that at this point. I think there's a really good case that could be made for manufacturing here. Yep. David, I know early on, we discussed issues relating to projects that were being delayed or just being, put off the calendar altogether because product, steel or materials were just not available. How has that changed? Has it changed? And what's been the communication to everybody that had a stake in this for you?
Well, it's had a major impact, because the supply chain, especially on structural steel components, things that, the bones of your buildings, has been so, it's hard to get the raw materials. And because of a lot of the incentive dollars that were distributed from the government to different industries, people found themselves on a pile of cash. And, I was reminded that this wasn't an economic crisis. It was a medical pandemic, a health crisis, but the business demands were still there. So in light of the fact that we have such a shortage of materials, the demand has been extremely high. So it just exasperated the whole problem. If I order structural steel today for a building, it's a pre-engineered building, which we do a lot of, it has any complexity to it, the lead times are 8 to 12 months. That's ridiculous. You can't do business that way. I signed a contract today, but I'm not going to have the steel for 8 to 10 months. I can't even, when do I book the revenue? So, it's become very difficult to manage your revenue, your growth in your business. And, we've had to communicate that whole story to our clients and, manage the start dates and actually, in some cases, actually find alternate solutions to get them the structure that they need. You know, they may have a contract with a client that requires that they get a machine or a part of their business online by a particular time in order to meet contract obligations for them. So now we're finding, you know, creative alternate solutions to getting them that structure that they need. And most of it's a hybrid look at a building structure. That's been our biggest problem is, and then, you know, right down the whole chain of command, overhead doors, regular doors, HVAC equipment, electrical equipment, it's all being impacted by supply chain. What used to take 4 to 6 weeks to get, now it's taking 12 to 16 weeks. And you may be, you know, approaching the 12-week time looking for the delivery and come to find out the raw material never made it to the manufacturer. And now it gets pushed off again. And we got a project in Clinton, Connecticut that ran on a generator for over 9 weeks because we couldn't get the electrical equipment. We wired the entire building, put it on a generator so we could meet our occupancy obligations to the customer. I mean, that came out of our pocket, but that's what you do when you're in business. So,
Wade, you've been also uniquely impacted by this and on a lot of different levels and fronts. You want to share some of the challenges and how you've wrestled with them?
It's been a new world with the supply chain issues. I mean, we have 5 tractors that we lease from Penske, and we've only got 3 of them on the road right now, and one of them's been off the road for a month. They don't have mechanics to work on these. All right, and it's a little frightening. You know, we've got enough vehicles, but if we had to purchase more vehicles right now, they're unavailable. There is upwards of a 1-year lead time to purchase a truck. We have customers that buy bags of milk for us for manufacturing purposes. My dairy has not been able to get bags for 2 months now. This has never happened before. All right, so they're shipping everything out in gallon jugs. Lactaid, a brand name product, we haven't had it in any regular circumstances for over 8 weeks. And now they're telling us it's going to be January before they get the packaging in. General Mills making yogurt, can't get the cups to package their yogurt. This has never happened before. All right, we've got water deliveries that we can't get. They don't have the packaging material. We had a problem with cheese deliveries because some machinery broke down. It's an Italian machine. They can't get the parts for it. It's been bizarre. And drivers, you know, we had cheese coming in from the Midwest that came in 8 days late because they didn't have any drivers to ship it. You know, we've been hanging on by our fingernails with our own driver situation. It's, you know, a real tough battle. And I can believe that 48% of the people are looking for new jobs because there's so many people out there trying to grab, you know, our drivers. You know, we'll give you an easy run. You don't have to haul any milk around, just drive, you know, and we'll pay you more. It's a new world out there, and it's a very difficult thing with the supply chain. I'm sure everyone heard about in England where there was no gasoline for the cars, right? My diesel bill has gone from $2 a gallon. It's up over $3.50 a gallon now. And I fear, you know, shortages of fuel, all right? Because everything else is in short supply, so is fuel next. And so it's a new world out there and very challenging.
Jeff Wright, supply. You had it went off the shelves as quickly as it went on the shelves. Of course, I'm referring to real estate. What's the status now?
Yeah, so the status now is it's still a major imbalance, inventory overall. Right now, nationally, and it flies in Connecticut, nationally, there's inventory of about what they call 2.2 to 2.4 months, when an average or balanced market has 5 to 6 months of inventory. So inventory is a real challenge, but I want to just take a little bit different stab at this. So we feel incredibly, our firm, incredibly blessed and incredibly fortunate because we've been able to do great business during this time because we haven't had some of the direct impacts, supply chain issues like some folks have mentioned. But part of the reason why our firm has been able to do well is because the one thing we've never stopped doing with our firm pre-pandemic and will continue to do forever as long as I'm leading the firm is helping people to get better, helping people to believe in themselves, helping people to believe that if there's only going to be, Pareto principle, 15-20% of everything gets done, or of the 80% of the market is done by 15 to 20% of the people. So part of the reason as a firm we've had success is that we try to help people on every aspect of business, mindset, all kinds of stuff we did with Sandler, belief systems in themselves. It's just not, we're not just going out and selling houses. What we're trying to do is help people feel like they're great and they can do more and they can make a difference and what they're doing matters. And from there, we were just positioned for a challenge. Now in 2008, the market crashed beyond. We did all the same things then and we got crushed. So again, we're very blessed and very fortunate, but there's no doubt right now, because of the level of some of the people that we have and very fortunate, they're at that level, they've been able to get more than their share in a market like this because the inventory shortage is just over the top. And people say it's supposed to get better. Right now, today, we had a sales rally for our company, and in Fairfield County, listing inventories even 10% down from this time last year. And last year it was a huge problem. And when you're talking about thousands and thousands of properties, 10% is a big number. So it still exists, and I don't see it clearing up anytime soon overall.
Well, you are to be credited for instilling the positive values and the beliefs in people, because it kind of starts there. I think everybody here would agree that the mindset is a big part of being successful in business today, under any set of circumstances, under the best of circumstances or the worst. If you have the right mindset, the challenges become easier to deal with, and they don't go away, but they become easier to deal with. Conversely, if you don't have the right mindset, then it's like the struggle is amplified, is multiplied. A good question was posed here by one of our attendees, and I think it's certainly worth touching on. What are you doing, if you're doing anything to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace and in the wider community? That's a big topic these days, of course. And is there anything on your radar screen or anything you're doing actively to try to broaden the horizon to give more opportunity to folks who maybe wouldn't normally have the opportunity? Anybody want to tackle that?
What we do here is, first and foremost, we try to promote from within. We give everybody an opportunity before we go to the street. We try to promote from within and give everybody the opportunity. I've spent a lot of my time working with local nonprofits and giving back to those who are less fortunate. And that's been taking a lot of my time for over the last year or so. And I'm happy that that's the case because I enjoy doing it. But again, we try to provide a path for people to do well here. We encourage people to take advantage of everything we offer here, and the door is wide open. And so we spent a lot of time on that. I mentioned earlier our training program. That is I had the privilege and the honor this morning to stand before our about 160 field employees at 6 a.m. and we had a meeting this morning, and we're getting back to some of that as well, by the way, because through COVID, we got away from that because we couldn't gather as large groups. I find it's very effective to communicate with your workforce one-to-one, face-to-face. And so I had the honor this morning to stand before them and talk with them. And I talked a lot about our training program because really what it does is it gets our less trained employees, our newer employees, our apprentices, it gives them the opportunity to really learn our business, to learn our trade. And what I said to them is we're doing it for 3 reasons. Number one, we're doing it to make you better individually, to make you better. Number two, if you're better, that means your family is going to benefit from that, and therefore your family benefits from it. Number three, it makes ENCON better. And I put ENCON third specifically because that's how I see it. I see it, it betters the individual and it benefits then their family, and then it benefits us as a company. But the message is, you know, there's an old saying, if it is to be, it's up to me. And you know, so we encourage people to grab onto the opportunity that we're putting out there and run with it. And then we try to help them along the way. And by doing that, we firmly believe, I firmly believe that you get, potentially you get an employee for life, and you build credibility. And again, you build that relationship with the employee. And so those are the types of things that we're doing here. And everybody has the same opportunity regardless of color.
That's great. Sean, I'm kind of reflecting back on something you brought up, I think at our last live get together, we were talking about like social responsibility initiatives or things like that having such a bigger role these days in businesses and attracting younger, maybe more, socially conscious employees and clients and all that. You want to touch on that for a minute?
You're on mute, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doug, one of the data metrics that we looked at as a leadership team is what's driving clients to go to certain financial advisors or consultants. And a certain demographic, older demographic, it was really based upon personal referrals. And that's always what I thought about of the business is your personal reputation and throughout the marketplace. And what this data showed us is that the younger demographic is also putting a high value on an organization's social and environmental governance. What are they doing to be better in the community? What are they doing to promote diversity? What are they doing to promote environmental causes? And I think that was pretty eye-opening for us. I think diversity is something that's on everyone's table, and everyone, if they're not looking at it, they absolutely should be. It's something that we talk about a lot internally. The reality is we're a male-dominated industry. Most of the people look like me, white males, and so that's something you have to acknowledge. And that's not going to happen overnight, right? And that's also, I think, there's some reaction to, well, we need to hire more females, or we need to hire, more minority. And I definitely agree that that's something that needs to happen. But it starts with getting them into the business earlier, right? It starts with going into, to the cities and educating people on what we do, getting involved with junior achievement, and putting people on a path, right? Going to schools and universities and talking about what we do. Not necessarily forcing people into the role or to the position, but getting people interested in coming into this and understanding that this could be a great career for anyone, regardless of skin color, regardless of so I think it's actively promoting what we do in the marketplace, and I think that that improves the overall perception of our organization.
Great. I want to get a couple more in here as we're getting closer to the top of the hour, but this kind of piggybacks on a question that was raised by one of the attendees. You folks have had the luxury, the privilege, however you want to define it, of being able to get together with each other once a month since the beginning of the year. And I don't want to presume that you are the only resources you are relying on for strategy, for insights or otherwise. And you can, shout out, raise your hands or otherwise, aside from these meetings that we have together, are there other people you call on, you rely on, you've gone to for advice or guidance for your own businesses through the course of this year to keep you on the path and maybe move you forward? Feel free to, anybody can answer.
The answer to that is yes. And they're the people who I spoke about earlier, who we have built strong relationships with through the years. Some of those relationships go beyond business. And in many cases, those folks become your trusted advisors. And so, I've reached out on numerous occasions, and I've had people reach out to me on numerous occasions, and just to talk through business related issues related to diversity and equity and all the things that we're talking about these days. So yeah, the people that you trust.
David, I know you're a big fan of podcasts and professional and personal development. Is there anybody in particular, or was there someone in particular you were going to name there?
Well, there's actually 4 things that I do regularly. Is I also sit on a national board for a metal building manufacturer. There's 14 builders from around North America that are appointed to this board. It's called the President's Advisory Council for Varco Prudent Buildings. So I've got 13 other builders that sit around the country, non-competitors, all in the same business. And we get together regularly. We just had actually our first in-person in Boston a few weeks ago, which was great to get together in person, but we do about every 6 weeks on a Zoom, and we usually get together at least twice a year in person. And that's an invaluable group, especially because it's related to my industry. But during the pandemic, there's no doubt that we all felt isolated, especially as leaders, because it's lonely at the top. And even though I have a strong leadership team in my company, I felt the need to go outside that, and I took advantage of my daily workout time and my daily drive time to. I've engaged with John Maxwell's podcasts. Just find them incredibly great. Entree Leadership is another one that I've spent a lot of time on, and I really enjoy Ed Milet's podcasts as well. I think all 3 of those platforms have done a world of good for me. It's given me insight, and I've actually been able to share them amongst my leadership team as well. I'm always hitting that share button and sending it along, and especially the young leaders in our group, the ones that we're training up to become the next generation to run this company. So I think that in that regard, the pandemic has been a positive for me because it's forced me to go outside of that, and find that camaraderie elsewhere, even though it's not bi-directional, but a lot of obviously listening, but some really good stuff goes on there.
That's great. In sort of, because we could obviously do this for another 2 hours, I'm sure, but in the interest of kind of wrapping things up a bit, and I always like to end these things with a nod to the chambers, to Bill's organization, Dan's organization. So I will ask all of you to just, kind of chime in here. Why are organizations like the BRBC and the Greater Valley Chamber of Commerce so important to the business community? What do you think? What's the main value that they provide to members and anybody who might be considering membership? This program, this thing being one, I'm sure, but anybody want to shout out, just, feel free to chime in.
Should Dan and I leave, or?
Hopefully not. Go ahead, Mike.
We'll be nice to you guys. We've been longtime members of the BRBC, and all I could say is between the communication and the camaraderie, the networking, the programs, the fact that both of your chambers have been able to maintain what you have, over the last 18 months, whether it's virtual or not, is very impressive. I do miss the in-person to get together and for Dan BRBC, there was the expo reception a couple of weeks ago. That was it was really exciting to just see people in person. But it's the networking part of it that has always been, whether it's the BRN, with the economic development, the leadership leadership development group. It is incredibly inspiring to hear from other leaders. I mean, forget about this group, but it's the chambers, it's the professional organizations that you just need to continue to be a part of and maintain a dialogue. I think the dialogue is incredibly important for all of us. Real quick, 10-second story. I was in a golf outing the other day with a big competitor. He's taking over eventually the firm, somewhat of what me and my partners have done. And the fact that we were able to compare notes but not trade secrets, it makes you think, what, I'm not in this alone. There's a lot of other people that are going through very similar things that you think you're unique and you're not. And we're not. And I've learned with this group and with the BRBC leaders that certainly there's a lot of us that are comrades in this whole adventure, so to speak.
All right.
Thank you, Michael. Doug, I know you're coming down to 3:59. So
Yeah.
if I could, on behalf of Dan, thank you. And as I said at the start, you are indeed a gifted speaker and facilitator. You did a beautiful job.
You're very kind.
To the panelists, let me just say, these are my takeaways. Laura, to add new capabilities. To Doug, to listen more intently. Chris Douglas, the importance of leadership presence. Both now and in the future. To Dave DeMaio, over communicate, daily outreach. I thought that was wonderful. To Sean, being empathetic, a quality that this world needs a lot more of. Thank you for that. To Michael Ayles, surround yourself with better people that are smarter than you. And finally to Jeff, appreciate and value every member as part of your great team. I also have to say that I love Michael's quote that fashion comes back every 40 or 50 years. So with that, Michael, I'm going home tonight to break out my leisure suit and my platform shoes, right? And wear it to work tomorrow.
Will you post that on social media?
Yes, yeah, we want to see evidence of that, Bill.
Right. Well, listen, thank you so much. Dan, a final word of thanks on behalf of BRBC.
Yeah, of course. No, always appreciative of everyone's time. I know I said at the top of the hour that everyone's time is valuable, but these folks have over and over again contributed their time, not just with themselves in the peer-to-peer group that Doug mentioned before, but coming on live today and in the past. And we just appreciate their leadership in the communities and within their own businesses, of course. I just look forward to the next one. So thanks again, Doug, and everyone that's participated.
I second that. Thank you all. It was great.
Thank you.
Totally enjoyed it.
Good day,
Have a great
folks.
afternoon, everyone.
All right. Take care.
Be well.
Bye.
Take care.
Be well.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.